So you've finally figured out how to take care of your sourdough starter, and now it's time to put it to use. In this tutorial, I'll show you every step of the process, including tips, tricks, and timestamps to help get you on your way to making delicious sourdough bread. Keep in mind when making sourdough, it is important to learn how to read the dough. The timestamps I've included may be different for you, but they are a good guide to start with. All right, let's go. The most important thing you'll need is an active and bubbly starter. Today, I'm using 160 grams. The amount of starter you use in your recipe will change the speed of the process, but we'll get to more on that in a minute. Next, we're going to add 325 grams of filtered water. This dough is going to have a hydration percentage of 65%. To figure out the hydration percentage of your dough, divide the amount of water by the amount of flour in your recipe. Once you have your starter and water in your bowl, whisk it with a fork or a Danish dough whisk until it's frothy. It's okay if there's a few clumps of starter. If you're starting your dough early in the morning, you can use as little as 50 grams of starter. The amount of starter, water, and the temperature of your home will all affect the speed that your dough rises. The more starter and water in your dough, the faster the dough will rise. Also, the warmer your house is, the faster your dough will rise. Once you get the hang of one recipe, you can play around with starter ratios to speed up or slow down the process to fit your timing needs. Next, we're going to add 500 grams of unbleached flour. It's important to use a high quality and higher protein flour for better gluten development and better rise. I prefer Kirkland Organic from Costco, but if you don't have a Costco membership, King Arthur bread flour is a great alternative. On top of the flour, add 10 grams of sea salt. Don't skip the salt. It's vital in regulating the fermentation process. If you are salt conscious, you can use as little as 8 grams. Next, we're going to mix the dough until it's shaggy and there's no clumps of dried flour. Since our dough is 65% hydration, it will be a tougher dough to mix. Feel free to use your hands for this step. A Danish dough whisk or a wooden whisk work well. Keep in mind the dough will be sticky for this part, and that's completely normal. This initial mix might take you a few minutes, but be patient, it'll come together. Once you've incorporated all the ingredients, it's time for the first rest. Cover the bowl with plastic wrap, a shower cap, or a reusable bowl cover and let it rest on the counter for 30 minutes to an hour. After the first rest, your dough should look something like this. This is when we're going to do our first set of stretches, stretch and folds. Wetting your hands slightly helps keep the dough from sticking to your hands. Just don't use too much or you'll change the hydration of your dough. To do stretch and folds, take one hand and glide it down the side of the bowl. Pinch the dough, gently lift up, and fold the dough back down. Turn the bowl a quarter turn and repeat the process. For the first round of stretches, we're going to do this for 3 to 5 minutes so our dough gets a jump start on gluten development. Continue until the dough starts to lift out of the bowl in one piece. At this point, you can switch to what I like to call bowl slap and folds. It's the same motion as stretch and folds, but we're going to gently slap the dough back down into the bowl before folding. After 3 to 5 minutes, I like to coax the dough into a ball in the center of the bowl. This step isn't necessary, it's just something I started doing and prefer, but feel free to skip it. At this point, your dough should look something like this. Then we're going to cover it and let it rest for another 30 minutes to an hour. After 30 minutes to an hour, your dough should look something like this, and it's time to do our second round of stretches, but these will be coil folds. To do a coil fold, use both hands to go on opposite sides of the bowl. Scoop down and around until your fingers meet at the bottom of the bowl. Gently lift up, keeping your hands together. Pull more on one side versus the other. Be patient, the goal is to stretch the dough, we don't want to rip it. Once that side comes out of the bowl, fold it down. Turn the bowl around and do the same thing on the opposite side. Once you finish that, turn the bowl a quarter turn and repeat the process one more time. It's the same concept as stretch and folds, but this is going to help give the dough a smooth top, which will come in handy later. And they're also kind of fun to do. Once you've completed a round of coil folds, we're going to cover the bowl and let it rest for another 30 minutes to an hour. Timing your folds doesn't have to be precise. Continue folding every 30 minutes to an hour until the dough starts to resist. This batch of dough for me, I did 1 set of stretch and folds and 4 sets of coil folds. When the dough starts to hold its shape and doesn't flatten in the bowl, that is a good indicator that it doesn't need any more stretching. Once your dough has reached that stage, cover and let it continue to bulk ferment on the counter. The time it takes for your dough to ferment will vary depending on the amount of starter used and the temperature of your house. This can take anywhere from an additional 1 hour to 10 hours. This is why it's important not to read sourdough recipes, but learn how to read the dough and look for signs that the dough is telling you it's ready to be shaped. You can find guides online to help you time it, but the best guide is your eyes. Does the dough jiggle? Do you see bubbles on the sides? When you touch the dough, is it tacky and not sticky? These are all good indicators that your dough is done bulk fermenting and ready to be shaped. When it's time to shape the dough, make sure you have all the tools you'll need handy. If your dough is properly fermented, you should not need additional flour. If that makes you nervous, feel free to use a little bit, but be careful not to use too much or it will make your dough difficult to shape. I start by shaping with a pre-shape. Gently use a push and pull motion, either with your hands or a bench scraper, to form the dough into a ball. The goal is to create a smooth surface with tension. Don't do it too much or you'll risk ripping the dough. Once you're done pre-shaping, cover the dough with the bowl we used earlier and let it rest on the counter for another 15 to 30 minutes. This is known as a bench rest. After 15 to 30 minutes, finish preparing before moving on to your final shaping. Make sure your banneton is seasoned well with either rice flour or all-purpose flour. If you do not have a banneton, you can use a regular bowl lined with a tea towel or paper towels. Just make sure to flour them so the dough doesn't stick. We're halfway there. Now it's time to shape your dough. For this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do the caddy clasp method. It's the easiest method and it does its job without being too complicating. I recommend getting this method down before moving on to others. To caddy clasp, you simply flip the dough upside down so the smooth side is on your counter. Reach opposite ends of the dough, gently lifting up and clasping the dough together. Gently transfer the dough into your banneton and let go. Most of the time, I will pinch the dough together at the seam once I get it into the banneton. This time, my brain had other plans, but that's okay. This just goes to show that sourdough doesn't have to be as rigid as some people think. My brain wanted to stitch this seam, so that's what I did. There's nothing wrong about doing this, but the likelihood the dough will stay at this point is slim. You'll see that I stitched it up and then I had to let it rest on the counter for another 10 to 15 minutes for it to relax enough to be properly stitched. If you pinch the seam first, you likely won't need to stitch the dough. Once your seam is closed, it's time to cover the dough and let it do its cold proof in the fridge. Depending on how proofed your dough is and how cold you keep your refrigerator, your dough can stay in the fridge for a couple of days. I like to make a double batch of dough so that way I can make one loaf the next day and one loaf a couple days later. The next morning, it's time to bake our bread. You should notice your dough has puffed up more compared to when it went in the fridge. If it hasn't, your fridge may be too cold. I keep mine around 37 degrees. If yours is colder, try turning it up a little bit. You can either put your loaf back in the fridge and wait for it to puff up or let it set on the counter until it's puffed. Keep in mind, if you keep it on the counter, the dough will be soft when trying to score it. If it were me, I'd put it back in the fridge and wait. If you're unsure if it's ready, you can gently poke the dough. If it springs back fast, it needs more time. If it very slowly comes back or doesn't come back at all, it's bake time. Before you take your dough out of the fridge, make sure your oven is preheated to 450 degrees. If you're using a Dutch oven, make sure that's preheating as well. Turn your dough onto a bread sling or parchment paper. Be gentle with it. We don't want to degas it. When scoring your loaf, confident, quick movements are key. If your blade is dull, replace it. For your expansion score, make sure you go in at an angle and deeper than you think. I bake my oval loaves in a granite roasting pan. It honestly works just fine for me compared to my round Dutch oven that I use for my round loaves. If you're using a roasting pan as well, it does not need to be preheated. Place your loaf into the pan and bake with the lid on for 25 to 30 minutes. After 25 to 30 minutes, take the bread out of the oven to take the lid off. It should look something like this. Then we're going to place it back in the oven, keeping the lid off, for an additional 15 to 20 minutes until it's golden. After your final bake time, it's time to let the bread rest. It's best to let the loaf cool completely before slicing. Letting it cool completely will help the bread last longer, and it helps set the crumb. I'll be honest though, if I know the bread isn't going to last to see the next day, I'll slice it slightly warm. After all, it's my bread. A painstaking 2+ hours later, and you have a delicious loaf of sourdough bread waiting to be sliced into. Congratulations! If you've been struggling to make a loaf of sourdough or have been waiting to give it a go, I hope you found this video helpful. I'd love to hear from you in the comments what helped or didn't help. Thank you for watching and happy baking!